Yes, okay. Wow, there we go. Well, thank you for your patience while I got this working. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. My hope today for this session is to talk a little bit about, just give you a brief introduction about me, my startup journey, how I started a founding team, the journey that I went through hiring, and I understand from Serena that there'll be more sessions on hiring. So I'm not going to focus a lot on hiring, but I will just touch base on the journey that I went through, some of the growing challenges when you are creating a founding team, some of the human dynamics aspect that are really important when you are putting a team together, and some of the importance of company culture. These are all experiences that may sometimes seem like they're theoretical, but they actually have a very important place and meaning when you are building a business. And then I'm hoping that we will open up to Q&A. My hope is that the session is interactive. So we have a little Jamboard that we're going to use along the way to allow you to participate. Tell me a little bit about yourself as we go along so I can cater the discussion to meet your needs. So that's kind of what my hope is. So let's get started. So a little bit about me. Okay. So I pivoted from a corporate career. I was in corporate technology for over 20 years. Anyway, I started my career in audit. And, along this journey, built a lot of skills in information security, project management, business analysis, development. And my last 8 years were in capital markets, transforming technology and trade floors. So I came with this backing. And even though I worked in a corporate setting, I actually had a lot of experience launching products and businesses, but always under the umbrella of corporate. Always working with large teams, but teams that were more experienced, more seasoned. So I came with that lens in terms of when I pivoted to launching my own startup, STEM Minds, in 2016. STEM Minds is STEM education for K to 12. We focus on learning experiences for youth, both in our in-person center, which is the picture you see behind me, my learning center. But we also have an online learning platform that we are right now growing for global scale. So this business this is my story that I'm going to share with you, started from an idea over lunch with a friend and building it into a local community-based business, and then pivoting it into an online product, and then going into a global market. And in this journey, all about building a team dynamics was a very important part of it. And then last year, I launched my second venture, which was a charity called InnoHive. And the goal of InnoHive is a skill building for upskilling, reskilling in technology for youth 18 plus. And the reason I launched the charity was when I was in the K to 12 business, I was hearing a lot of young people in high school and university talking about how they weren't getting value in the career choice they had made. And they wanted to pivot, but just didn't want to risk all the time and money again in doing it. So this charity was very specifically launched to give people a safe place to upskill, reskill, and try different career paths and choices with a focus on technology. So they build a confidence, comfort before they pick a path they may take. Both of these ventures have taught me a lot over the last little while. And I was talking to Serena and Marlena earlier that, whether you're in business or in school, learning is a lifelong experience. And it's the same with me. It's no different. Even though in corporate career, I was learning, I learned through my entrepreneurial journey, and I'm still learning today. So that's kind of been my two ventures that I've launched. I'm also a CEO venture of 2021. CEO is an organization that supports a lot of women-led businesses. And every year they select 6 to 8 businesses that they fund through a pool that the activators in that community, put funding in. And I was selected one of those ventures last year, and I was really privileged to be part of that community. I've also been part of many incubators and accelerators. As part of any entrepreneurial journey, that lifelong learning journey is really key. And these accelerators offer a great platform to keep building your skills, honing down on areas that you know really well, but also pushing yourself forward to building new skills. I was also the privilege of winning the top 100 WXN Canada Powerful Women Award in Entrepreneurship last year as well, which it's a humbling experience in being an amazing group of women. But this award, I think for me, meant a lot in the sense that the journey that I have gone through in building a business comes from a very authentic place. It comes from real life experiences. You can read all the books in the world. You can attend all the sessions in the world. They will give you ideas, but to actually go through yourself is a very different experience. So coming here today and talking to you about founding team is a very personal experience for me. It has my highs and lows. It has all the things that went great and all the things that did not go great, despite all the corporate career training I had and everything. So my hope is that I will share some of these experiences with you today, and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and chart your own founding team pathway. So as we get started, would love to learn a little bit more about you. I'm not sure the audience who's here today, where you are in your founding team journey. So would love for you to use the Jamboard. And I know Serena is going to help me in that in terms of why is the founding team important to you? Because I think it's really important to understand that we all are coming from the same page of why the founding team is so important. And I'll absolutely share my perspective with you, but I would love to hear yours. You can put your ideas through sticky notes using Jamboard on the board itself. We will touch base on it after the next few slides I take, and that's how the whole presentation has been put together. Okay, so let's start with me. So what is a startup journey? And I want to take you through a understanding of where a startup journey from a founder and a founding team perspective works. It's a very balancing act. This diagram that you see on the right side of my slide is very key. I'm part of a program right now called Imagine with Scale, and this is what they use to actually show you, as a founder, where do you fit in relationship with your team and the journey of your business. So as a startup, you're in the first big black blob with a tiny red dot in it. You as a founder are key to the idea you want to build. Your people come in as a founding team and they learn from you. They support you. You all are lining up your purpose. And that's how a startup goes. But as you go in the journey of maturing your venture, it moves from where the founder's role becomes smaller and the people's role becomes bigger. This is where you are aligning as an organization with the founder. And as you continue the roadmap, there will be a time where the team and the founder are on equal footing because the venture has become big and complex. It has all these processes and systems that the founder can't do everything alone, and you coexist. You work together. And then as you continue with your journey of transformation, where now you have become big, whether it be big nationally, internationally, the big is your definition. The founder becomes small and the collective capability of the team plays a bigger role in success. This is where you are moving from a startup into an enterprise. And as you move on this journey, the role of the founder becomes small and small and small. And that of the collective capability becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So the question is, where are you in your journey? I am right now in the journey of traction, where my role and my team's role are at equal footing. And early stages, when it was about developing a product, taking it to market, I did everything. And then it was about, I can't do everything. There are only X hours in a day. I need to hire people. And what do? That's where the journey of a founding team and your team as an enterprise start. But in this early stage of startup, as a founder, I started as a visionary. I had this idea that I wanted to build my venture around. I knew what I wanted. I knew what it should look like. I built the vision. And then as I built my founding team, I built my venture, I became a hustler, because I needed to win business for my venture. And as a founder, your role evolved from being a visionary to a hustler to grab business so your venture can grow. And once you get the business, it moves into being a hacker. And what a hacker is, well, now I got the business, I got to implement it. What are my processes? What am I going to do? And you actually become that person who's got to make all these little pieces come together. So the idea you started with, the business that you earned, now you're going to go implement it. So as a founder, your role evolves in this journey of a startup roadmap, and the team plays different roles in different phases of the dynamic relationship. So where are you in your roadmap? Would love to hear that, so I can make sure that we are interacting in ways that will give you the information you are looking for. So I'm in that fraction phase where my team and I are at equal setting right now where we want to go. But I started with where I was the one who was doing everything and I had to hire everybody. Is there, I know I haven't seen anything on the chat bar. Okay, so we're somewhere in founder stage. Anybody else who wishes to share where they are in their journey right now? Okay, you will move on. Okay, so when we talk about a founding team, I wanted to kind of put this slide out there about when you Google search on a founding team, you get lots of definitions, and there are tons of resources out there that talk about what a founding team is. I wanted to share my definition of a founding team. So to me, a founding team is the first group of people you hire to help you in establishing and growing your venture. And that founding team is the one that takes all the burden from you in this early stage when you have an idea, you want to build it. And that first founding team can take many shapes and forms. So let's just talk a little bit about why the founding team is so important before I go into the details of the founding team. So if most startups, they will look for investors at some point in time. 65% of startups fail due to problems within the startup's management team. There's a whole book by Noam Wasserman on that, which is quite fascinating. And it talks about you can have the best product, the best idea, but if your startup founding team is not the right balance and blend or where it needs to be, the startup will fail. A lot of venture capitalists, in fact, when you go for pitching, they always say, who's your founding team? What's the foundation of it? Why are they important? They focus on that because they know that a founder alone can't do everything. And the founding team is really critical for the success of that startup in early stages and as it moves forward. The breadth and depth of skills that are required in early stages of your business are very different than as you move forward in the journey of your business. And you can't do it by yourself because there are not enough hours in the day to do it. So when I started my business, I started out of a co-working makerspace. I took a desk, I paid my monthly bill. They gave me a little room where I could run my programs. And that's how I started my business. And soon I realized, well, I've never been a teacher, so I wasn't going to teach, but I need to hire teachers. So I went and hired my first part-time teachers out of UIT, which is Ontario Tech now. And they were the ones that had the first Bachelor of Education program that taught teachers STEM education was part of it. And so I was able to hire teachers that are able to bring the right mindset to what I needed to deliver my programs. So in this journey, I hired 4 part-time teachers running 2 programs, making sure the ratio of children to adults was right. And I was able to run some creative content in my programming. Within 3 months, my programs were sold out. The makerspace that I was in, the desk space I had was very small for what I needed to do. So I ended up putting a lease out for a 3,500 square foot facility, building my team. Now I had this whole center, and I needed to hire people to kind of work with me in delivering, because now I had this fixed cost that I had undertaken, but all I had was part-time staff. So I went through this journey where I had an idea what I wanted STEM education to look like. I had an idea of how I wanted to run my enterprise, but what I didn't have was the actual people to teach. I didn't have all the infrastructure processes that I needed to run the business. And that's why where I had to go in and hire my first founding team. And these 4 part-time teachers that I hired in 2016 as part of my first foray into the space are still with me today as my founding team. in this process, I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes that I'm going to share with you today. So as a founder, one thing that I learned was I had to be very clear on my philosophy of what I was doing, why I was doing it, how I was going to do it. My big why, I had to be very clear on it. I had to be very clear on my purpose. Why was I doing the business and venture that I was in? What was my vision, mission? What were the values that were important to me to run my business? And what behavior I expected out of my team? Because this will determine who you hire and who will stay with you in the long run. So a lot of people talk about, as a founder, to have a co-founder. And co-founders are very important. They play a very important role in the journey of a startup. But you need to make sure the co-founder you bring on board is someone you align with, someone who is aligned with your mindset, your vision, mission, and can work with you in tandem, in harmony. So when I started my business in 2016, I had a co-founder with me, but my relationship as a co-founder didn't last more than 4 months. Within 6 months, we dissolved our partnership. And that was a big lesson. But one thing that I did do really well was I had a shareholder agreement in place before the co-founder and I partnered together. And this is a lesson you will hear from many startups that have great co-founders that actually work amazingly well. There's so much in sync. And then there are others who don't have those relationships and they struggle in their journey of growth because somewhere there's a disconnect in philosophy, purpose, vision, values. And one of these things become a bigger issue that breaks those relationship. So it was very important that when you bring co-founders on, that you do have a shareholder agreement drafted upfront. It is better to go with that worst case scenario than have to think after the fact. And because in my early stages relationship, I had that shareholder agreement, when we decided we weren't the right fit for each other, it was very easy to separate. It was very easy to go our own ways with no hard feelings, and relationships still left intact. And to me, that was really important. And so that's a really important thing to consider. When you're looking at your founding team, if you don't have a co-founder and you want to bring a co-founder on board. The second thing that was really important was I decided I didn't want to have a co-founder, and I tried a few times, and it was just that I'm set in a little bit of my ways how I want to run my enterprise. So it was my personal challenge I had to deal with. But I created my first founding team with people who believed in my purpose, vision, mission, and values. Those 4 things is what glued me to my founding team. It wasn't about money, because they could probably make more money somewhere else. But as a startup, you're tight on cash. You can't pay big salaries that some of the seasoned professionals were asking. So I went after a hungry team who was hungry to learn through experiences in their lives. And that's the team I onboarded as my founding team. And I made a commitment that I was going to nurture them and grow them, because they were investing in my idea, in my vision, with an equal footing in it. And that's how we were going to grow the team. So with my founding team, I started with 4 teachers who worked part-time with me as we were establishing our learning center. More and more of their friends heard about STEM Minds, what we were doing, the culture we were building, and how it was a cool place to be with lots of cool toys. And suddenly we became a hub of teachers wanting to come and work with us, even just on a part-time basis, so they could get some experience. And what we were finding was that every teacher who came our way, every person who came our way, if we were aligned in our purpose, vision, mission, core values, they actually stuck with us longer. Where those 4 things were not aligned, they never stayed with me long enough. And that was really, really how we cemented our team. And over time, as we were hiring, as we were working with people, we were able to see who is going to stay with us and who's not going to stay with us. Very early on, we would know team players that were going to be with us in the long haul and those that were only there to learn and move on. And either one was fine, but it was being very clear, of who was going to keep working on strategic initiatives with me as I grew up the startup from an early stage into the next stage. So just summarizing my story, I stayed on as a founder. I always hired people who complemented my skills. In fact, my entire team is everyone with complementary skills. They all bring different talent to the table. They all bring a different energy to the table. And that's what really glues us together as a team, because there's a lot of mutual respect for each other, for what skills we bring to the table. I outsourced functions where I had no expertise. I was horrible at marketing. I mean, early days, for me to put a post on social media was like a fear factor of, oh my God, I post something wrong, what will happen? So I hired experts. I outsourced my functions that I did not want to spend time and money doing myself because I didn't have enough expertise. So I outsourced marketing. I bought it. Instead of building my own technology team because I didn't have the funding to do it, I outsourced my technology development piece to a team that could complement me. Again, legal, accounting stuff that I had no expertise in, I outsourced all those functions. I'm a firm believer in strategic partnerships, especially in early stages when funding is tight, cash is tight. To hire experienced people, the reality is they want their experience to be respected, and the remuneration they expect. I couldn't afford it. So I took the outside approach. I work with a lot of community businesses. I never went to look for the biggest out there. I actually always looked at the community around me and I said, who is a small business? Who's a startup that I could work with? Because there's this mutual respect of being a startup. That's how I worked. A lot of the products and services that I use in my business, from CRM to some of the toolings that I use, are all from local community startups. And that did multiple things for me. It created a community for me of trust around me, that even though I did not know everything, I was trusting somebody else who themselves were little startups on their own base. We were able to leverage each other's hunger for growing our business and putting something together amazing. And those relationships are very powerful. And I would highly encourage anyone looking at, okay, where do I start? Look at those partners around you that could be your best friends running businesses, but can become your extension arm, because it does help. I also, early on in my business, set up a strategic advisory board. It's a non-fiduciary board. It's a board that I knock on their doors when I need help in areas where I don't have expertise. So when I started, health and safety was a big thing, and I did not know enough. So I hired someone who was, head of nursing at South Lake Hospital, worked with a lot of health and safety issues. She had a lot of familiarity with, working with children with disabilities as well. So I was able to leverage her expertise in understanding things that I need to do in my business that I am not comfortable with, or I don't know enough about. I hired people who understood education from a government perspective, so that I had that lens into my business. And I grew my strategic advisory board with complementary skill sets that I didn't have. But these were people in the industry or in the market that were comfortable or happy supporting a startup. And I learned so much from that advisory board, who would guide me and challenge me when I was maybe not thinking as strategically. And that was a really great starting point. And then my other thing that I did was I did join a number of accelerators, one after the other, sometimes multiple at the same time, because it allowed me to build my community, my network. It really allowed me to fill gaps in what I was able to do and not able to do within my realm of operation. And all of this allowed me to move my business from this tiny startup coming out of a makerspace, investing in a learning center, and then having ambitions to create a product and go global with it. So those were the steps that I took in my first 2 years of launching my startup. So at this point, I would love to take a pause and make sure that we can talk about, any questions that you have in this, because I don't know where all of you are in your hiring journey, but it would love to kind of see if there is a perspective we can share or any questions I can answer before we move on. So one of the questions I see in the chat is, where did you look to in sourcing the team? So I did use Indeed, and I found with Indeed, I was inundated with so many resumes that it became really hard to filter through it. So definitely Indeed is one I do, but I actually put a lot of requests to my network. I would ask my network, do you know someone with the skills? And I would always have like a job description that I would use. I created very simple one-page job descriptions, and I could say, hey, this is the skill I'm looking for at this role. And that kind of helped me to look at the candidates from within the network and pool that I selected. I also actually worked with Costi, like the new immigrant center. I actually hired a number of immigrants and refugees who came to this country. And I will tell you, the talent pool that I got was amazing. Smart people who had such good experiences. They were hungry to establish themselves in a new country. All they needed was someone to believe and trust them. And I took advantage of that in the sense that I was able to pull this talent up, give them opportunities to grow and learn. But at the same time, they were great contributors to the business that I wouldn't have been able to do what I did in early stages. So I would definitely encourage looking at those programs as well. We also did a lot of job posting in university boards. And I found there's so much talent in universities and colleges that's untapped, that for me, going after that pool was really great. And I really got a lot of amazing students who work with us who were just looking for work experiences so they could decide what they wanted to do. So those were the three areas that really helped me in kind of hiring my first pool of talent. The question on, do I know of funding grants for hiring? Absolutely. I took advantage of a lot of those grants. Early days, you're short on money, so grants are a great place to go. I'm going to park that question for a couple of slides later because I actually have a slide on that I will talk about. And then another question is, how did you know that they were the right candidates? Yes, that's a very good question. That's why that purpose, vision, this mission and core values is very key. As a business, we actually put together a poster for ourselves that's sticked on a wall saying, who were the type of people we wanted to work with? And we made sure in the interview process, those were the people we wanted to work with. Even in my corporate career, I think everyone has a different vision of what hiring means. I always hired for hunger because I myself was always hungry for learning. So if anybody said to me, I don't know enough, but I really want to learn and I'm willing to work for it, I would give it a shot. And I would say out of my hiring I did, 80% of my hiring was very good, because these were candidates who were willing to put the effort, they were willing to learn, they were willing to go outside the box. And that's one thing that's really important. When you're a startup, if you have a lot of preconceived ideas, you will only grow the business with those preconceived ideas. I wanted to break and disrupt K-12 education. So I really did not need people who had done it the same way forever. I was looking for disruptive mindsets. I was looking for people who were willing to say, you know what, I did this in school, didn't work, I want to do it differently. I would hire them because they bring a diverse perspective to a dialogue. Because you as a founder, you very clearly know your vision, where you want to take your business. You already have that strength, but having that diverse point of view brought on the table for discussion was very powerful for me, because I changed some of my direction based on that feedback and input, and I had no regrets with that. It was actually very powerful. So I think having that clarity on your mission, vision, core values, and reading that into your interview process is really important in making sure you're hiring the right people. And will some people take advantage of you and leave after a year? My whole thing was, I was creating the future leaders. If they had to go, I actually had no issues with it. My whole idea of disrupting education was capacity building. So the more people learned from me and they went out there, I had no issues with it. But for every business, that mindset is different. And you also have to be prepared that, and one thing that I learned in my business is that as you mature your business, the longer you have the team, unless you're able to re-energize it, it actually becomes very complacent. So there's value in actually re-energizing the team and having the cycle work with you. I'm just going to look at the chat if there's any other questions. Yeah, so social services based business as well. You're absolutely right. There are some amazing volunteer boards that have opened up to support social service based business. I think one that I know is called Spark. It's a volunteer board where people who are looking to support charities and not-for-profits go. And it's a great way of getting resources who are volunteers that can help you out in that space as well. Okay, let's move on to the next discussion. So I probably touched a bit on this already, where to go for hiring, the network you go, university, college, campus. I have to say virtual assistants are a great resource as well, where simple things that you want to do, but you don't have the time to do it, and it takes your big chunk out of your day. Virtual assistants are also great. There's companies like Virtual Gurus and others that are out there that you can hire on demand for specific work. And I would encourage anyone who feels really overwhelmed with amount of things they need to do, that if they needed to bring some specific expertise to help them, by all means do that. Because to me, that's how I did it as well. I also hired a lot of co-op students. So it's funny, when we early started, again, people think about high school students as students, but they're amazing, bright, hungry youth who want to learn and build skills and create great resumes so they can apply to good universities. And I was surprised of how many students wanted to come and work for STEM Minds. And that their guidance counselors will reach out to us and say, hey, we've got students who want to work for you. So we ended up actually launching a co-op volunteer program, and we formalized it, created proper processes around to support these young people, and they did some amazing work for us. So definitely co-op placement, especially at a high school level, you don't have to pay them, they are free. So they can also help social enterprises, because a lot of these young people would love to work for social enterprises as well, and you kind of build your capacity with that. The only caveat with having high school students working with you is that you do need to provide supervision and oversight. As long as you're able to structure that within your startup, it's a great way to go. And as I said, we got some amazing co-op students who did such wonderful job. They were so much more mature than sometimes I think we give high school students credit for. So for us, that really worked out to be a great opportunity. The other things that we did was, as I've kind of mentioned that earlier, just once before I do that, where I didn't have the expertise, I did go out and found people who would support me. And this is where, the technology, I brought in an outsourced company, accounting, legal, marketing, I outsourced. Now I did hire on the sales business development side partners to come with me, but that was not a good experience for me. Again, lesson learned. Some things work well, some things don't. I wasn't good at it, so I ended up hiring people who would do business development for me. And very early on, I realized that not everyone can sell as good as they say they can. So it's a bit of hit and miss. I think that's where I became a hustler, because I needed to figure out how to sell myself. So when people say that they can sell, I could interview and ask the right questions and make sure that they were doing it the right way. But I have to say, there's one place where I made a lot of mistakes, one place where I threw a lot of money on consultants and who didn't really add any value, was in the sales and business development side. So when I was in one of my accelerator programs, the advice I was given was, I knew at the stage of business you are, you need to sell, you need to be the hustler. And once you figure that out, then go hire someone. And that was a really good advice, because as I shifting my focus on selling, I learned a lot about my clients, about what would work for them, what wouldn't work for them. And it really allowed me to channel the energy of the business to where it needed to go. Client services is really important. In my case, I ended up hiring university level students who helped me with client services. That worked out really well. And as I said, the role of a co-founder, absolutely. As I said, for some of you, having co-founders will be really important, and I will encourage you to explore that, but make sure you put shareholder agreements in place. So as I talked about, campus recruitment was great. So I'm going to ask a little bit of question on funding grants. Canada Summer Job Grant is an amazing program. I have hired almost 10 to 20 people every summer through that grant program. And what I would do is all my projects that, like whether it be research, whether it be things that I wanted to do, I bundled them during April to September because that was a period for Canada Summer Job Grant. I would hire these students because my payroll would be funded 50%. And I was able to produce a lot of stuff that I wouldn't do between September and March. So it was me about organizing my workload, things I had to do, and bundle those resources in the Canada Summer Job Grant. And it was a great program as well. Got amazing resources that helped out. The other area where I looked for a grant was the training and development grant program. So if you go to like RNC or employment services in your community, they always have this government approved training and development grant program. I took a lot of the grant funding to upskill my team. So because I hired a lot of university students, and what I noticed was that they did not have a lot of basic leadership, communication, business skills that I had taken for granted being in a corporate setting. So I actually took that grant money and I created a leadership program for my team for almost 8 months, where they went through modules on being a good leader, communication, conflict resolution, basic leadership management skills that you would need as you grew your business. And that was one of the best investment I did for my team, because it really allowed them to grow personally, but also able to contribute significantly to the business. I also got my entire team trained on project management. I did a full certificate program that was funded by training and development grants. They will normally give you about 50 to 60% of training funding. So that was really very good. The other one was the MyTax research and development program. I have undertaken 1 to 2 MyTax research every year. And that has allowed me to hire, PhD students that I couldn't afford on my own, but bring that skill set to the table under the academia partnership and really evolve my product. In fact, with York University, I did 2 terms with one of the professors of the maths department and building some algos for us and doing some research. I'm right now working with University of Toronto and doing more research on gamification. So MyTax is a great program. If any one of you are considering research, they actually had an opportunity out there that before March 1st, if you submit a MyTax proposal with an academic partner, you only have to pay 25%, which is around $1,800, compared to $7,500 you have to pay for per term. So I would encourage you to go on the distribution newsletter for MyTax and know when these opportunities come, because they're a really great way of getting some good talent to help you in doing research and helping with your products as well. Same thing on the academic partnerships with universities. I'm a big supporter of using university talent to help grow my idea. A lot of the young people who are in our studying, do have a very progressive mindset. They are willing to disrupt and look at things from a different angle, and it's a great resource to go. So these were some of the areas that that I went the things that I took advantage of and opportunities that I work with. There's a resource that if you haven't looked at it, if you do a Google search on Concierge Services, Government of Canada, they have a tool where you can go and outline some of it, just as a interactive Q&A. Then it tells you at the end all the government programs that are available that you can access. I have always accessed government programs pre-pandemic, very much during pandemic as well. And now, because I have built a relationship with these government agencies and entities, when new funding opportunities come, it becomes a lot easier for me to put my application and grants and work with it. I mean, a lot of them, they're consultants that help you do grants as well, but I have been able to write all my grants on my own. I feel like if you have a good business and you understand your business well, the grants are not meant to trick anybody. If you're if you're comfortable writing, you should be able to do them. And all the grants we wrote ourselves, I would say I've won over 90% of every grant that I submitted. So that's been really, really good in that regard. The other thing I would mention at this point is if any one of you doing development in technology, specifically in application development as well, shred credits are great. And I would encourage you to build that shred credit early on in your program, because in your venture, because shred credits can give you significant tax credit back. So all the development work that I did in terms of my product that I built, my online learning platform, I got IRAP grant funding for it. And then I got shred credit as well, and IDM media tax credit as well. But the key in all of these is that if you have people who are on your payroll, you get almost 80% of the salaries that was invested in that development work back. If you hire vendors, you only get 50% back. So I'm going to encourage you to look at shred and IDM tax credit as well, especially if you're building products that require that technical development work and cycle. And the reason I'm bringing it now is if you're then in that early stage of development and you have the intent of applying for these tax credits, you do need to make sure you have all the processes in place in terms of change management, code management, and things like that. Because when you apply for those tax credits, CRA may come back and may want to audit it. And if you don't have those processes in place, it doesn't work. So, you got to think forward that I want to apply for these grants, build a process early on in your venture that you can take advantage of them. So these were all the opportunities that I utilized and, got good benefit out of it. So I'm going to take a pause here again and just see if there's any questions in terms of, where are you looking for talent based what I have shared? Does that resonate with you? The gaps that you want more deep dive on, I'm happy to answer the questions. Yes, the question in the chat was, did I have a third party do your shred? I would say absolutely yes. Shred is very, very complicated. Even though I came from a technology background, my ability to do technical writing that meets the shred criteria was way apart. So it was worth paying the fees back to the company that did all the shred submission. And generally they will charge you between 15 to 20% of the shred amount that they would that you have to give back to them, but it's still worth it. You still get some money back out of that. And third parties, definitely there are lots of organizations that do a really good job in doing tax credits for that. And if any one of you are in the business of producing media, I would suggest that you look at Ontario Creates. They do the IDM Interactive Digital Media Tax Credit. You get a lot of tax credits for if you're producing videos, you're producing media for teaching and things like that. They have a whole section on that. And if you're in production, like film and media production as well, there were tons of grants there. Even in gamification, if you are building games, interactive experiences, they all are eligible for the tax credits that you can get through Ontario Creates. So I would encourage you to look at that. It's a really good resource to know what you can take advantage of. All right, well, let's now move into little challenges. So, started a business, know where I want to go. I've hired the team. I've been professional development training my team. And you would think that everything would fall into place. Well, I learned that as you grow your business, as you grow as an entrepreneur, your team also grows. It's almost like when you have children, like when you have kids, they grow, they forced to listen to you because they're dependent on you. As they grow, they have their own voices, their own opinions, they want to challenge you. Entrepreneurship and having a team is no different. So when I started, I had this very young team. They all were hungry, willing to learn, contribute. It was awesome. But as they all grew themselves, their own personalities evolved, their own mindset evolved. Instead of always being a listener to conversations, they wanted to become bigger contributors to the conversation. They wanted to have a say in decisions and choices that we made as a business, which was absolutely wonderful because I did not feel I was alone. But it also created a lot of challenges because I was so used to, as a founder, telling everyone what to do, that I had to constantly level set with that feedback. I made a lot of assumptions that because I've said that with the team, I've shared that with the team, that everybody understood it. As we grew, we were still a nimble team. We had a lot more on our plate than we were resourced to do. So a lot of people weared multiple hats. They all gave their best. But what we had now created was a huge challenge for ourselves, where we were not resourced to do all the things we wanted to do with our growth. We had people wearing multiple hats, doing multiple things. It created a lot of stress for people. It opened the whole dialogue around mental health, and especially during COVID, it became very evident. People had a lot of multiple priorities that were on their plate. And it's a journey you go through as a business, because when you're starting up and you have, when I had my first 10 clients, my first 50 clients, 100 clients, 1,000 clients, we were able to manage it. Now we were going big. We were going after, running 30 programs, in a term with 30 schools, plus our evening programs. We had all of this thing going on in developing an online learning platform as well. I learned the hard way that as I was going through, I did not do a great job in making sure my team was aligned with where I was taking the business. I was very clear on my vision. I thought I was communicating, but I wasn't. And this became more evident to me as we would have discussions. And I would like, why did this not happen? Why did not happen? I would do a deep dive on it. And I realized we were all going through this growing pains of trying to find our personal best in this chaotic space of a startup trying to grow. And there were a lot of things that I did do. One thing with me is, as I said when I started off, I'm a lifelong learner, so I learned really well. I am not afraid of vulnerable leadership. And this means I am not shy to tell my team, oops, I made a mistake. I'm not shy in owning up when I did not made a right business choice. I'm in a business where making mistakes is okay for children. This means I have to give my team and myself the same privilege that making a mistake is okay. We're all going to learn through it together, even though it feels hard in that moment. So there were a lot of challenges we went through, from communication to leadership and prioritization, work-life balance, but we dealt with it. And I would love to share with you what we did. So one of the first things that came out was we had now, by this time, I was in my year 3. And when we had more projects, we were almost a team of 20 at times, where we had all the Canada Summer Job Grant students, all these multiple projects running. So the first thing I did was I actually hired an HR consultant to help me put an employee handbook together. And we put together our mission, vision, values, why we were doing what we were doing, all the processes that were in place for employees, so that everyone was clear on the human resource aspect of running a business. Sick days, volunteer days, in lieu time, if people wanted to take extended time, what they could do, policies around remote working and in-person working. So we spent a lot of time creating an employee handbook to make sure that everyone was on the same page of understanding what does it mean to be an employee at STEM Minds. And I had the consultant draft it, but I had the entire team provide feedback in it, which was really good. And we actually have a policy now that every time we introduce a new policy, we get the entire team to review it. So even recently, if you've noticed that the policy to disconnect that came out, even though it doesn't apply to a small startup like us, we still put the policy in place, and we still tell the team, give your input. So having that employee handbook was great. And now it is so wonderful. Every time we onboard somebody new, we've got a consistent messaging to give to employees. All our procedures. Before there were all tons and tons of emails saved as PDFs, but now we had a nice document to make sure everybody who was an employee, who was a volunteer, who was an intern, had very good understanding of what it meant to work at STEM Minds. The second thing we did was we actually created formal job descriptions. Even though people who were wearing multiple hats, we said right now, the stage of business we are in, we still need people to wear multiple hats. We were not resourced to have people with siloed job descriptions, just not big enough for that. So we created formal job descriptions, and in every job description, they had a section of all the different hats they wore, with the intent that as we grew and we hired people, those sections will go out of their job description into somebody else's job description. And that really created a lot of clarity for people. Finally, it's like, okay, these are the 3 hats I'm wearing. I'm going to do 10% of this, 20% of this, this and this. And then when we hit this milestone, this will go to somebody else. And having those job descriptions brought not only clarity to the founding team and the team that was with me, but also to new people we were hiring. They knew the roles of everybody else in the team and what it meant to interact with each and every one of them. I invested in training on leadership and communication. I truly believe that no matter what type of startup you are, what venture you're running, leadership, communication, project management are very important, because no matter what you do, you need to know how to do all of these things. And when I invested in that training, the productivity of the team, the interaction between the team, huge difference. So we got huge value in doing all of these things. The other thing we did was, in 2019, STEM Minds became B Corp certified. So, having social environment impact was very key to us. And diversity and inclusion was very key to us. And we've always said, that we embrace diversity and inclusion, but saying it and doing it and having your processes aligned with it are very important. So we actually made sure that everybody went through that diversity and inclusion training. But I also did something else. In one of my program, it was called an icebreaker exercise. And the icebreaker exercise was to understand the personality types of all the team members so that we would know how to interact with them. Because not everybody behaves the same way, interacts the same way, because we're all individuals. We have our own DNA, we have our own thinking, the hats we wear and what we do. So I did this exercise with my team, and we identified how people like to interact with each other. And through that process, we recognized that half of the team, we call them the blue, the green thinkers. These are people who can't think on the fly. They're pretty smart. They just need a little breathing room, their own time to think through before they can come back to you with ideas. Then there was a red team that was able to think on the fly and give you ideas right away. And then there were others who just loved the blue sky thinking, and they just needed their own time to interact with the phase of the business we were in. So this training of diversity and inclusion had a very different lens. It was a diversity and inclusion on who we are as individuals, not gender, not race, not anything else. And we all learned to respect each other, because that changed how we interacted as a team. Now, when I do staff meetings, I do not ask for decisions at the meeting. We share, everyone goes back, and within timelines, provide feedback. And it allows the people who are thinkers, who need extra time, versus those who know how to respond right away, provide that feedback accordingly. And I have to say, having done that one little step of understanding the dynamics between the team and how we each work with each other, allowed us to be a really strong team. We were able to leverage the best of each and every one of us and really work well, which then led us to adopting another tool, which are called personal manuals. This was about recognizing that we all like to be approached and work with differently. At the end of the day, not everyone is alike, and especially in teams, you're rarely going to find people who are exactly the same. So we introduced personal manuals where you can tell openly, how do you like to be interacted? Some of my staff would say, I like to start my morning at 10 o'clock. I need to finish by so and so time. I can't. Whereas others were like, I like to start early. Then there were people who were like, well, I like to be corresponded in email. I don't like chat. But what these personal manuals did for us was recognize that people are the best in their own comfort zone, and how as a business we create this normalized environment where everyone could be who they are and come forward and be their best. So we redesigned a lot of our processes, our team updates, how we prioritize with each other based on that feedback. And it actually has allowed us to be a stronger team. That chaotic place we were in the middle of that journey, where there was a lot of chaos, a lot of not understanding, to, okay, I understand my place, I understand my role, I know my priorities, and I'm going to work with it. And this is a process that's going to continue to evolve in our business. Just because we did it today doesn't mean it's going to stay the same tomorrow. So we are an agile team. Every quarter, we look at these processes and say, do we need to change based where we are right now? And we do that as a team together. And it has allowed us to bond together as individuals, respect each other as individuals, and be the best in who we want to be. And I have to say, it's such a pleasure to be in a team like that, when everyone feels that grounded and that connected and that have that mutual respect with each other, because that's the team that I want to go with. That's the team that I want to grow with me as I take it to the next step. So it's been a fascinating journey. It's been a lot of learning, a lot of mistakes, a lot of chaos, but having that founding team work through this process of contributing to what brings a normalized team has been very powerful for us. So again, going to take a pause. Are there any similar challenges you are seeing, or different challenges that we haven't talked about that you would love to share, with your peers here who are all on the call?
Feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, if nothing else, we'll move on. So I want to talk a little bit about human dynamics. I touched base on that in the previous slide, where we were all with these people with our own unique personalities coming in. And I think sometimes human dynamics is very underestimated. I know for me, I knew I had to coach people. I knew I had to lead them. I knew I had to provide all of that. But I never understood the significance of the dynamic piece till I went through this journey myself. So again, in the program that I am in right now, Imagine on Scale, which is a program that allows the businesses to put processes in place for scale up. And they talk about the context, right? Why are you in this business? Your philosophy, because that's what is the umbrella that brings us together. Then it's managing the energy in your team, your own energy, that of your team, of your business, and then the collective capability we build when we're together as one team. So if you notice, I talked about the employee handbook, which is collective normalization of rules for everybody. The personal manuals are very individual. And then the processes that we built from there were focused on what we needed to do for business, but taking into account every person's individual needs. So this human interaction of connecting, adapting, and accepting is really, really important as you grow a team. Even within a founding team, if you don't have all of those aspects lined up, it creates a lot of disconnect. It breaks the trust in a venture, especially as a founding and early stages of your startup, where you are trying to build trust with the people around you to support you in your venture. These things become very important. I very early learned that I came from a corporate setting. So for me, I came with large teams. I could delegate, people would get things done. And when I started my own business, the pace at which things I was used to wasn't happening. And first I would get upset about it. Like, why isn't this happening? Like, what am I doing wrong? And then I realized I am trying to project my experiences on a team that I've hired who hasn't gone through the same experiences. They're not in my shoe. They haven't gone through the journey I have gone through. So to expect them to respond the same way as I do is not very helpful. So I think it became really key to respect the fact that empathy is very important. Vulnerable leadership is very important, because whatever standards you set up for yourself, for your team, will impact how they connect with each other, adapt with each other, and accept each other. And this may seem like a very theoretical exercise when I talk about it, but I'm going to encourage all of you to take a pause moment in your venture and say, how do you connect with your team? How do you adapt when things don't work the way you want them to work? And how easy it is for you to accept mistakes and when things don't work out the way you want it to. Because I'll tell you, each one of these, when I went through it the first few times, was very hard. I was angry, I was upset, like, why is this happening this way? I've done all the right things, but it still happened. And what I learned along all of that was empathy was very important. And I have evolved my leadership to make sure that I am an empathetic leader. I don't use my personal lens in how I work with my team, the interactions we establish in our teams. I don't get upset when things are not delivered when I expect them. I actually try to understand why they were not delivered, because I know if all of them, my founding team, which is still with me, has the same passion as I do, believes in what I do, if they're unable to deliver, it's not because of complacency or lack of trying or lack of skill set. There's something else that's not working. And I've always taken that lens now to figure out the root cause of issues and challenges and address them. And address them not just by myself, but as a collective capability of a team. And that has really allowed us to move forward and respect how humans, as humans, we interact with each other and we work with each other. So I've been doing company offsites now since almost 3 years. We summer and in the holiday season, we actually take a break. We go out as a team. We celebrate our success. We celebrate our learnings. We spend the time building our strategy for the next year. So I will build my business plan. I will come up with my vision strategy, and we will use the offsite as a way to just look at things out of the box from a different point of view. Every meeting that we do, we always talk about the wins, the challenges, the shout outs, because we take so much for granted every day of our work that we don't do enough of this. And by celebrating our wins, we celebrate each other. By highlighting our challenges, we talk about things that didn't work well and how together collectively we can solve them. And by giving a shout out to your peer who really did help you out, we're building that acknowledgement that, we respect the team, we respect each and everyone's contributions. Every meeting we talk about how are we feeling today? Because in this time, especially during the pandemic, mental health has come up over and over again. And interestingly enough, the mental health challenges are not all because of work. It's just because a combination of not being, as humans, interacting with people in person, seeing people in person and having conversations, just having the little chat over lunch and talking about silliness. People miss all of that. So just by talking about how are you feeling today, we're acknowledging that we're all humans. And as a team, emotions go high and low. You go through the peaks and valleys of trying to work through the challenges of business, our personal lives, and at the same time trying to contribute to the growth of a startup. acknowledging those emotions really makes a big difference in the mood, the energy of the team. We've changed our decision-making process. So we don't make on-the-spot decisions. We now give everybody the time to think through decision-making and come back. And I have to tell you, we've really upped our delivery when it comes to that now. Like, people have time to think about contributing their talent, their ideas in much more powerful ways than previously we had anticipated. So that's really worked well for us. We've also changed how we allocate, prioritize work. So before, I used to do an annual plan, and then we would do a quarterly plan, and then we would just track our delivery to that. We have now gone to, okay, what do I have to deliver in the month, and prioritize within a month, and we move forward with it. And what this has done is, because as a startup, and I'm sure many of you go through this yourself, you start with an idea, saying, this is what I'm going to focus on. Either a new priority comes in or a new challenge comes in, everything has to be shifted around. And it really makes having too firm of plans very difficult to execute on. And if you have members in your team who are very analytical and like to kind of go checkbox, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, they're going to struggle and find it really hard to see progress they're making. So by chunking the work differently, we were able to manage a lot of the team expectations. And all of these changes the mood of the team, changes the mood of how, as a founding team that's going through these growth challenges, they were able to overcome them and be agile to still produce and deliver at the end as a nimble team. So those were, things that we did to kind of overcome some of these human dynamic challenges. I'm again going to take a pause and ask the question, are you seeing anything in that range, or any different types of dynamic challenges that you see with teams? Because the best way to learn is with each other. Okay. If not, there's one question in the chat. So Andre replied, like, I really resonate with the idea of adapting the environment towards employee pace and changing lens as a leader. I would say, Andre, that was one of the biggest shifts that I made. And I didn't realize the value of it in early stages. But I'm going to encourage any founder that if you are in that space, do look at your leadership from that different lens. You will see a big difference. It's very easy to say, well, I'm going to fire so-and-so because they're not doing what I want them to do. What I've realized is that a lot of times people don't do a bad job because they're bad people. They just haven't been given the opportunities and coached and trained to be their best. And I think as leaders, our role, our job is to bring the best in people. So I have taken that very strong lens that I never discard people. I'm willing to invest in them. I'm willing to show them different paths, different ways. And at the end of the day, if they need to leave, absolutely they can leave. I have no issues, but I know as a leader, I give everyone an equal chance to learn and grow. So company culture, you've heard me talk about company culture a number of times today. And I talked about philosophy, purpose, vision, value, behavior. And these may seem like broad terms, but these are terms that are really important, right? Philosophy is your mindset. Like, what is your mindset about your business? How do you want to do what you do? And this one may be very different for every business, whether you're a social enterprise or what the focus of your startup is, but you should spend a moment to nail down what your philosophy is about running your business. I think purpose is very key. If you know why you do what you do, it becomes easy not only to hire a team that aligns with you, but also brings the rest of the team together. Vision, and I have to say the vision I had when I started my business to the vision I have today has been an absolute journey. It evolves because you will learn more about your venture. So none of these things are carved in stone. They are going to change. They are going to evolve as you evolve, as your journey, as your team evolves, as your venture evolves. My vision in my early stage was that I wanted to impact my community. My vision today is I want to see every child STEM literate, no matter where they live in their world. So what I have to do for that vision versus the vision from my community are very different. So nail that down, because I think it is very important to have this vision evolve with you and review it annually. You're a venture, you're in a roadmap, you're going to grow, you're going to learn. None of these things happen overnight. And I'll tell you, in early stages when I launched my business, and people, I would go to all these presentations and people had their purpose, vision, mission all laid. I'm like, I have no idea what that is. I felt so guilty. I actually felt that I was inept. I did not know how to do this because every other venture knew what all of these things were. But then I soon realized they all went through their own journey to nail their purpose, their vision. And I just had to go through mine. And I did hit that spot where I knew what I wanted to do. So give yourself that flexibility, that freedom to experience what your purpose is, what your vision is, core values. So, when we started our core value, so we in October last year took an exercise, and I opted to stay out of that conversation because I wanted to know, I knew what my values were. If I didn't influence my team, what were their core values? A totally different exercise. And they all went together as a team and brainstormed what were their individual values and the values they were expecting out of STEM minds. And I have to say, it was a fully aligned team because we've been going through this journey together. We've been learning together. And finally, when they put the values and I put the values, we were fully aligned. And that's the values we published on our website, because it didn't come just from me. It came from that collective capability, because I'm striving in my roadmap to become that collective capability. So it is not about just my values. It's the collective values that we bring as a team for the startup. And it changes as you go through different phases of that journey. We also spend a lot of time on behaviors. So if we say, we embrace lifelong learning, if we say we embrace mistakes equals to learning, what does that behavior actually look like? What it looks like is, if somebody makes a mistake, it's not about giving them a reprimand and saying, you did a bad job, not good. It's about acknowledging, well, something did not work. Let's work together. Why it did not work. So we actually as a team went down and agreed to the behaviors that would align with our values. So nobody felt judged. Nobody felt disconnected. Nobody felt that if something went wrong, that they would somehow be publicly shamed. We took all of that risk away. Because when we are in business, we actually have a rule of no judgment, no opinions, like on individual people. When we look at something, let's look at it objectively, because the behaviors that we actually enact, if they don't align with the values, then you're going to have a disconnect again. You're going to say, one of my core values is integrity. And yet your actions that you take don't align with integrity. That's a disconnect. So really spending some time to pull it all together is really important, and making sure that you give yourself and your team that moment to bring that company culture together. And I will tell you, the company culture at the startup, when I launched my business to mid in 2 years versus now, is very different. That company cultural evolution is not a straight path. It's ups and downs, and trying to figure out in those different phases, what do you need to do to align? That's the big thing. And everyone has to figure it out in their own team, in their own dynamics, how that happens. So what did we do? We absolutely worked together as a team. We embraced our convictions and put them out on our website, in signage in our company. We just don't talk, we act it. And that company culture is so critical to where you want to go and where you want to take it. And that founding team you have, that founding team will evolve. The people you may have day one may not be the same people you're going to have 2 years. So you need to decide what company culture you're going to build, because your founding team will evolve with it. And I also want to say that if you start with a team and people leave, there's nothing wrong with that, because at different stages, different things are important to different people. And being aware of that, acknowledging and recognizing it, and integrating into your overall philosophy, mindset, and the culture of your company, you are going to create a more stable place for your business and for new people that join your team. So, have you defined your company culture? Would love to get your perspective. And I know there was a comment in the Jamboard about human dynamic challenge is constant as our team is completely, yep, I fully appreciate that. And, and I'm sure when you have remote teams, that dynamic culture piece is so critical to getting it right, especially now, as more and more teams are looking for remote resources. If you don't create that safe environment where people still feel connected, still feel part of it, you will see a lot of disconnects. And it's all about recognizing what culture you want to do, how you want to build that relationship, human dynamic relationship within your team that will help you kind of pass that phase. So any thoughts on culture? Okay, if not, we'll move on. So pitfalls, I've talked about team dynamics, definitely. We went through as a team times that things went well, times when it's like, not working. We need to kind of regroup, reset, figure out how to fix those dynamics between team members and as a whole team itself. Conflict resolution, conflicts happen everywhere. And it's same happens in team. You're going to find some people are strong in their opinions, some are more listeners. It's acknowledging that all of these different dynamics are always there, but how do you create a safe place for conflict resolution is really important. We actually had the team go through conflict resolution training. Because we had some people who were more quiet, didn't want to ruffle the feathers, didn't want to say anything, but they actually had valid opinions. And then there were others who were strong in their outlook and what they had to say and were very verbal about it. And sometimes others would feel intimidated by them. So we had to create a safe place where conflict resolution was addressed. It was not something that was left aside. Every time, I'm a firm believer, if there's a problem, you got to deal with it head on, because the more you let it fester, the more it becomes a bigger problem. So conflict resolution was, again, part of the training process we did, and it really helped the team in kind of coming together and making sure that if there's a problem, we know how we're going to resolve it. Disengagement, a lot of times you can disengage your team members if they don't feel like they are contributing members. And I went through a phase that even though I would tell team members that I value you, I value your contribution, there was a time that maybe my actions didn't align with what I said and what I actually did. So I had to do a lot of self-reflection myself and make sure that I, as a leader, was not creating disengagement by not addressing challenges as they came along. And so these were some of the 3 key pitfalls that we really had to deal head on in terms of making sure people were not disengaged because they felt their voices weren't heard, because of different personality dynamics working with each other. And if there was a conflict between people, that we addressed it with respect and understanding and empathy, and respecting who we each are as individuals. And addressing some of these in your team as a culture, as dynamics of how team members operate, the business processes you build around them is really, really important. So we created a safe place to raise issues, no judgment. We never did performance appraisals. We did reflection reviews, because I do not believe that, performance appraisals are actually an effective tool in coaching and building leaders. It is all about guiding and coaching in their journey of learning, in their journey of contribution. And it's a really strong way of building a strong team. And that's what we did. And we had to let go of things didn't work. Sometimes I had an idea or a team member had an idea, was so passionate about it, but it didn't work. It created more issues, more challenges, more disengagement. We let it go. So we were not married to anything and everything we did. This is where the term agile comes in. As a startup, you really have to be agile. As a founding team, you absolutely have to be agile, because not everything will work the way you expect it to work. And if that agility is built in, if that safe space is built where people don't have to worry, am I going to have a job because I made this mistake? Am I going to get criticized because I just did not do this perfectly? You do have to kind of address those issues early on as a team and say, how are you going to deal with it? In business like mine, I had a lot of flexibility. If mistakes happen, we were able to overcome it. But in some startups, making a mistake really may not work. If you're in a medical business or a healthcare business, errors can cause a lot of issues and challenges. So it is something you do have to look from the lens of your own business and see what works, what doesn't work, and how you need to create an environment that will allow you to shift priorities, shift things as the journey you go through. Any other pitfalls that you've experienced that you would like to share? Or observations you have that you think could benefit with the team, that's the audience that's here today? No? Okay. So to summarize, value alignment is a very big piece. And you've heard me talk about that a lot in today's presentation, because founding team, as much as it's about bringing technical skills and specialized skills to a venture, it is about working with people. It is about making sure that your value system is aligned and that you're walking the same pathway together in the same direction. Hiring and retention is absolutely a very critical part, that you're hiring people that will align with you, will align with the culture you want to build in your company. Complementary skills. At the end of the day, you don't want to have the same type of people in your company. Diversity makes companies vibrant. So complementary skills are really important. And lastly, the whole process around human dynamics and how it translates into the processes you're going to build in your business and your venture. They together will determine how your founding team operates and how it can function together as a cohesive, collective capability to take you to the next level. So this is my journey. These are my challenges, my lessons learned that I have gone through in this in building my venture. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, or areas that I haven't touched on that you're interested to learn about. Would happy to do that.
Everyone, feel free to unmute yourself to chat with Anu.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brendan. Just a question. You touched on a little bit about different grants for summer students and different training opportunities. Just wondering about people with special needs. A friend of mine runs a school for children with autism from grade 1 to grade 12 type of thing. Mm-hmm. And my daytime job, my boss, his son has autism, so. I'm very much at the infancy stages of putting together my business plan here. But what can you share any ideas around the grants around special needs or people with different requirements to help facilitate them getting jobs and short and long term?
Yeah, so there was definitely, so even with us, even though we're in STEM business, we do work with a lot of students with learning disabilities as well and on the spectrum. So there are a couple of things we've done in hiring. When you apply for Canada Summer Job Grant, as an example, you can actually get additional funding if you hire people who have disabilities and need extra help. Okay. So you can absolutely, so when you fill out the Canada Summer Job application, they will ask you, are you hiring anybody with disabilities? And you can always put funding in there for that. And so I hired one year a student who was in a wheelchair. And so we had to create some space for him and do some things for extra for him. And we asked for a little bit extra funding to meet those needs. And that was totally acceptable from the Canada Summer Job Grant perspective. The other thing is that even when you apply for job training grants, if you say you are servicing a community which has special needs, you are always allowed to ask for additional funding for that purpose. So make sure when you're filling those applications that you do look at that criteria of who are you hiring for and who you are hiring, because for both of them, you can get extra funding. The other thing I also did was when I was hiring early days, I actually partnered with U of T's occupational therapy division, and I hired students who were in that program. And when you hire students like that in that program to support students with special needs, you can also get extra funding for that. So the key is in all of these application processes to make sure that you clearly articulate the community you're servicing or people you're hiring who may have special needs and that you need additional funding for it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And that concierge services program that I mentioned earlier, it's a really good program. I was able to access a lot of grants and be aware of what's in the pipeline of grants that may be coming through their newsletters and being onto their email distribution list.
And what was that, sorry? You say concierge service?
Concierge Services, Government of Canada, yeah. They have a full portal. So it basically goes through an interactive list of questions. And then it tells you based on your business, the sector you're in, the stakeholders you're servicing, these are the grants, loans, opportunities, government programs that you can leverage.
Thank you very much.
And there's definitely, Brendan, a lot in the market right now about supporting children with special needs and hiring people with special needs. There is funding available.
Thank you.